I can't hear.
We have no audio. We cannot hear you. We did not know the pledge was happening.
Shall we do it again?
Okay, I believe, welcome all our administrators, and Corey's here, right? And PTA, am I right, PTA? Welcome. What do you want to do? Yes, I am. Awards are 2.0, School Board Member Appreciation Day, and I want to thank everybody. We have gifts for each of us. I don't know what it is yet, but thank you very much. Oh, okay, go ahead. Here.
Mrs. Salzer is here. Mrs. Egan?
Here.
Ms. Davenport?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mrs. Callan?
Here.
Mrs. Lammel, absent. Mrs. Petropoulos?
Here.
Okay. We have 3.0 donations to the district.
I need to do something for 2.0 first.
Okay.
All right, you can mute yourself again.
Oh my God.
So for 2.0 awards and recognition, it is School Board Member Appreciation Day. And I have a resolution that I would like to read out, but I think we have to mute someone's speakers over here first because I'm hearing some feedback. School Board Members Day, November 15th, 2020. Whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children. And whereas school board members are entrusted with the guardianship and wise expenditure of scarce tax dollars, and they are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in their trust. And whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear, shared vision of public education for their schools, that sets high standards for the education of all students and requires the effective and efficient operation of their districts. And whereas school board members adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer board policy, and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policy. And whereas school board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation, and whereas employers are supportive of their employees who serve as school board members, generously lending support and time. Employers give their employees the opportunity to better serve the needs of the school district and communities they represent through sometimes tremendous sacrifice to the employer. And whereas decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life and safety in their communities, placing them as the front line of American democracy. Therefore, be it resolved by Chicago Ridge School District 127.5 that we proclaim November 15, 2020 as School Board Members Day as a way to honor those citizens who devote their time and energy for the successful education of our children. And I think in any year, it's very important to recognize the amount of time that is put in as a volunteer effort But this year, especially everything that we have gone through, the amount of extra meetings that have been required, the amount of time spent talking with the community. I just want to, on behalf of the entire district, say thank you to everyone. Those who are here did receive a gift. And those of you who are at home, those will be delivered tomorrow. We did not want to deliver them and have them sit out there in the storm. So again, just wanted to say thank you to all of the board members. If you want to unmute yourself for the donations to the district.
Okay, we have donations to the district. First one, Board Policy 880, gifts to the district. Potential board action is being sought to accept donation from the Chicago Ridge PTA not to exceed $6,000 in grants and school relations for the district. Okay. According to the same policy, gifts to district potential board action is being sought to accept donation from Chicago Ridge PTA not to exceed $5,000 of scholastic dollars for grants and school relations for the district.
So, and the reason we have two separate line items is one of those is using scholastic dollars, so we had to separate that out. But we do have Mrs. Willer from the PTA here on behalf of them, and I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything, but you're definitely more than welcome to come on up to discuss the donation.
Can you unmute her?
He's trying to unmute you so they can hear you. So if you don't mind starting over, Mrs. Willer, so the people at home can hear you. Thank you.
So some of the things that we did with the grants for like last year was student incentives, field trips, things like that. This year, unfortunately, we know the field trips are out. Currently, I mean, it could possibly be something in the spring. So for the grants, we unfortunately aren't approving anything that cannot go through in phase 4. Or if we go down a level, then, you know, to that also. Some of the things that we did get this year were student incentives, and for the teachers also, and then a virtual field trip. And a lot of the teachers asked for books for the fact that obviously we can't share. So those were some of the things that we were asked for the grant. As far as the scholastic dollar grant, normally what we would do is each school for the book fair would get $500 to go back into their library. So again, the students aren't able to go in the library this year. So we decided to do it's kind of like a wash, if you want to say. If your classroom sells $200 worth of books, your teacher will get to pick $50 in scholastic dollars to spend in their classroom, and the book will go directly to the classrooms this year as opposed to the school library like they normally would. And again, we do have a lot of teachers that are asking for, you know, like desks, things like that, and just books for their areas as to where that money would come from for the scholastic dollars. And then the $500 per school, normally we would do at the beginning of the year, we would donate the $500 per school for like drug awareness, NJHS, student council, things of that sort. But with, again, how things are going right now, we felt that this year we would just do an overall $500. And however the schools felt that needed to be spent in their school is how they can spend it. We would like to know how they would spend it just so we can, you know, just track things as to what they're doing and saying. So yeah.
I've been in this district for 40 years. 4 kids went through this school system. PTA during that time, we had a few hiccups a couple of years ago, but all during that time, PTA has worked so hard to be very generous and giving to our students. So thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you a lot. And it's a lot of time and effort, you know, especially the last few years to get all this done. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Willer.
Muted. Do we have to vote? We have to vote, don't we? Okay. We need a motion on 3.1.
I'll make the
Have a
motion.
motion, please. Need a second?
I'll second the motion.
We got two?
Okay, just to clarify, Mrs. Egan on the first, Mrs. Petropoulos on the second. Mrs. Egan,
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle, absent, Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Need a motion for 3.2?
I'll vote for that.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
I'll second.
You got a second?
and Mrs.
You need a
Egan.
second?
Okay, to clarify again, Mrs. Callan on the motion, Mrs. Egan on the second. Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salter.
Me? Oh, aye.
Thank you.
Okay, 4.0. We have consent agenda for minutes of October 13th, open session, minutes of the October 13th closed session, and minutes of the 27th study session. So we don't have, okay. We got the financial reports. Do I need to read over all of them, Dr. Thorns? Okay. Okay, can I have a motion, please?
I'll second.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Hillman. Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle, Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Okay, superintendent's report?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, Mrs. Callan.
This is the second vote that I was passed over.
Oh, Mrs. Callan, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Callan on that motion for the consent agenda.
Aye.
Thank you, Mrs. Callan. And Lori, if you can mute yourself again. All right, good evening, everyone. Hope that you made it inside nice and safe before the rain came out. I have a few things that I wanted to go through. First off, you'll see in your packet that you have the school department reports. And one of the things I wanted to point out that is very exciting outside of the normal is that over at Ridge Lawn that we're supposed to get a lending library, a little library that is being put out there by the Boy Scouts. It's supposed to be tomorrow. We'll see how the weather is. But so that is very exciting, as well as some of the pictures of students returning. It seems like we've been in person for a lot longer now, so those seem like they were quite a while ago. Also, in our enrollment reports, we are down about 5 students from last month. Our enrollment was 1,442, and that's a decrease of 17 students from last year, which has really stayed fairly steady throughout what we've seen as a decrease throughout this year. So that's where we're at with our enrollment. We heard from Mrs. Willer with the donations, but I just wanted to give a summary on the PTA report. The PTA had a meeting last evening. Unfortunately, it had been rescheduled and I was not able to attend last night, but I had a nice conversation with Mrs. Willer and some of the administration who was there. And just a couple things to point out. We do have our next upcoming food raiser on November 18th at Buena Beef from 10:30 in the morning till 11. So I always make sure that I always make those. And then I believe McDonald's is the next one on December 9th. Right now, they have the virtual book fair going on from now until November 22nd. So that is going on, as well as their stocking event. One of the things that they want to try out new is a winter scene drawing contest that's going to be open to all students, whether they're in person, out of person. There will be a spot for them to drop off their drawings, and then it will sit there for a while before anyone else grabs it. So we're very excited to see some of those, as well as a PTA sponsored food drive, which we know in any year that people around this time of the year are really looking for food at times. And this year especially, there's some people in need. So we're excited to partner with the PTA on that. So thank you for everything you're doing for our students and schools. Jumping to 5.4, vacant position and possible staffing needs. One of the areas is custodians. We are in need right now of a float custodian. We're always looking for sub custodians. We have one who's on the agenda later today. And then we do have a custodian open over at Ridge Lawn. We are also, we have some paraprofessionals listed in there, as well as a 4th and 5th grade special education position over at Ridge Central. So those are the possible staffing needs that we're looking at right now. Our parent-teacher conferences are coming up very soon. This year they will be held all virtually. Our first night of conference is Wednesday, November 18th. And those conferences will be held from 4:30 to 7:30. And then the second round is on Tuesday, November 24th. And those conferences have 2 different time slots, from 12:30 to 3:30 and from 4:30 to 7:30. Those of you who do have students in our schools should have received an invite to sign up for that time. I know I have my own kids' virtual parent-teacher conferences this week, so I'm very interested to see how those go. But I'm excited for a chance. I know some people who don't normally get to go to conferences will be able to participate now with it being virtual. So hopefully have a great participation and see a lot of people sign up for that. Our next item is 5.6. It's a discussion on the strategic plan. If you remember at our study session in October, Dr. Bob Madonia came out and discussed a strategic plan that would take place from 2020 to 2025. Dr. Madonia did our original strategic plan back in 2015. In your packet, you'll find his proposed timeline, as well as kind of what processes he would look to put in if it had to go virtual for any time during the pandemic. And I really just wanted to have a discussion with the board about what the options are moving forward. And there's a couple. We could go ahead and sign the contract and start the entire process as he had laid out in January. We could also go ahead and sign the contract, start the process with the board, whether it's in person or virtual, and then hold off on bringing in big community members, especially with what I would assume would be future mitigations coming down from the state fairly soon about the number of people we can have in person. We could also just go ahead and sign the contract and wait until we feel safe with the numbers that we can bring in before beginning the process, or we just don't sign a contract at this time and continue to have these discussions. So I just wanted to open it up to the board to kind of get a feel for what everyone is thinking. And we do have an action item later on in the meeting if we decide to go that route to approve the contract. But I did want to have a discussion with it now. So I just wanted to open it up to anyone. And it looks like Mrs. Petropoulos would like to comment.
I was not a board member for the last process. And in fact, I am up for my seat for reelection in April. And there were multiple board members. Can you hear me? Okay. I saw Lane go like this. I was not again. And I know that there's multiple board members. I think that and I don't know who's running, who's coming back, whatnot, but I don't think it's a good idea to, one, do the strategic planning, and then some people may be leaving or not returning. I think that the whole new board who's coming on for the new term should be a part of it. I also think that it is a bad idea to do it right now. If there's still things on the old strategic plan that have not really been fulfilled, as well as the fact that I looked over what is suggested in the planning process, and it's all kind of done on team processing and team building and people being in a group together and rooms together and carousel activities. And I don't know that I think that that can be as successfully done in a Zoom setting. I don't think that there's any problem with tabling the idea until we have a better read on what's going on. I think that teachers and administrators have their plates full right now, and to ask them to come for 2 sessions, 5 hours each, I just think it's a lot on everyone's plate. I feel like everyone is focusing on the immediate, and I think people would be focusing on the pandemic in the discussions about the strategic plan. And I hope that in a 5-year plan, that's not one of our priorities, that things are a little bit more, I guess, whatever normal is. So I actually am on the idea that we should table this and wait to do the planning.
Thank you, Mrs. Petropoulos. Anyone else would like to share? No. Mrs. Egan?
I would completely agree on tabling and waiting. I was part of the process. It was a phenomenal process. One that I might have been interested to hear more about his plans on how he could have done it remotely, but that wasn't part of the presentation. And the process as described and the way that it was really does need to be done in person. And knowing that we could have new board members as well, I think is a fantastic idea, because the idea with the strategic plan is it really is supposed to be board led. So I see no problem waiting for this to happen.
Thank you, Mrs. Egan. Mrs. Sulzer?
I'm actually in agreement also to waiting this out. Number one reason is we'll have some new board members in, and I think they should be part of the process, especially if they're going to be here through the bulk of a new strategic 5-year strategic plan. And then for another reason, hopefully, and I'm like fingers crossed, legs crossed, everything's crossed, that we will be in regular school by then. You know, things will be better. Hopefully we're going to have that vaccine and things, whatever. You know, there's no way of knowing for sure, but I think we're better off to be putting this off until April.
Thank you, Mrs. Sulzer. Would anyone else? Mr. Hillman?
I think we could table parts of it. I think as a board, we can get together and start the board process as a group, either via Zoom or in person. But tabling most, I agree, tabling most of it.
So, Mr. Hillman, if I'm understanding you correctly, getting it started, working on it through the board, whether it's in person or virtually, but holding off on the community aspect?
I agree with that, yes.
Ms. Davenport?
I would agree with Mr. Hillman. I don't see there's any reason why I can't start now. I think Dr. Madonia set forth a very articulate and well thought out plan. And even when he was asked if the plan can get started even with the pandemic, he said yes. So he showed no concern whatsoever with the board being able to get started and get moving. I think there's been a little bit of a history of liking to kick the can down the street, so to speak. But if this is something that can get started now, I think that's a great idea. The only second thing I would say with it as well, though, is if the board decides to not move forward at this time and to just hold it in abeyance, then I would be against signing any contract. I think the board would be remiss to be signing a contract.
Thank you, Ms.
if they have
Davenport.
no set date to even start on.
Mrs. Egan?
Why sign a contract that we don't plan on moving forward with on any set date?
Okay, her audio just stopped talking, so I heard you call me, but I was just hearing the end of what she had to say. So there's definitely, I guess, sort of a delay. I don't know what that is. But I would like to.
Can I get a new computer so people can hear me talk?
We'll ask Mr. Furcano to get you a new one and also to get you a hotspot.
This is ridiculous.
Okay, so I definitely with Greg would like for us to follow up in terms of the plan that's already been put in place, but I am not for signing a contract with the consultant to do this now or in So I would like to have kind of some closure and some next steps for the current strategic plan and a plan moving forward, but not to start a new contract or strategic plan in that sense.
So Mrs. Egan, if I'm understanding correctly, wanting the administration to come back to the board with where we're at in the strategic plan that we've been using, and figure out what we need to kind of close up and to look from that viewpoint.
Yeah, like each year we've had the action plan meetings and we've heard from the administration in terms of, where we are. So that's what we've had done each year. I would have expected, that to have happened at the end of the 5-year plan as it was, and not necessarily to be rolled into the new plan, but, that would have happened anyway. So I would very much not like to just table it and put it off, but to finalize where it's been and where we think things can go. And then as we plan to move forward, we can decide later on if we need to make a whole new plan, if we want a consultant, if we don't want a consultant, where that needs to go. But we definitely just need closure and a status update on that plan.
Unmute, there you go. So my 2 cents is basically just that. I actually agree with Tiffany as well. I think whether you look at what Greg is, Mr. Hillman is saying, or what Ms. Egan is saying, I actually agree with both of them. I think if the board decides to move forward, I think we have the ability to do it. Dr. Madonia gave us a plan to do it. He never said you can't. But I also agree with Ms. Egan, unless we're going to, in fact, move forward, I think she's correct. I don't see how we can sign a contract if everything is just kind of sort of up in the air. I mean, if the board decides to just, at least within the board, move forward, I think she's right. That's perfectly acceptable to do. But unless we're going to actually engage the contractor, I don't see why we would be signing a contract to do that unless we have that plan. Although, what I do feel though is what Mr. Hillman said. I think we absolutely can move forward with Dr. Madonia now, even if we don't actually physically meet as a group. I don't see what the big deal is, at least in getting those initial steps out of the way. But, I feel either way. I think both Mr. Hillman and Ms. Egan are both correct.
Does anyone else on the board have anything they want to share? Mrs. Salzer?
If we're not going to make any movements yet, any strategic movements yet, there's no reason to be signing a contract at this time. But as we move forward, if sometime in April, if we're going to do the whole plan, well, then it needs to be discussed again. But for now, absolutely not.
Anybody else? So if I'm getting a sense overall of what the board is thinking, that we continue to talk about our current strategic plan that we have in place and really looking at what we've done and what we can continue to do, while holding off on going through the signing of the contract and moving forward with that entire 5-year process at this time. But really look to see where we're at as far as the school year and the plan before we bring it back to the board. Is that kind of an overall sense that I'm getting? And again, the action item will still be on the agenda, and we will have to move on it appropriately when we get there at that time. So thank you for everyone for sharing out. The next one is 5.7. That's the outdoor education field trip. Normally, our 6th grade students at Findlay Junior High have an awesome opportunity to go to Camp McLean in Burlington, Wisconsin, which is an outdoor education field trip. Mrs. Curtilla is normally in charge of this trip, and she received an email last week basically from the camp, not saying that they're closed or anything, but saying, unlike in years past, we are requiring a deposit down, which is non-refundable. And at this time, you're not even allowed to travel to Wisconsin for the amount of time we normally would. So it's my recommendation. We usually get this approved by the board, but it's my recommendation that right now we just hold off. We're not allowing any other field trips. And I do want to make sure, and that if we can work with Findlay staff in the future, that if we can find a way to make sure those who missed the trips, whether it was last year or this year, trying to be creative to find a way to make that happen before they leave the junior high. And we can make that happen. I think we all would like to see that because it is a great experience. But at this point, we're just going to have to wait and see like we do with everything else. But I just wanted to let the board know that because that's normally something around this time we would bring to you for approval. But at this time, I'm recommending that like all of our other field trips, we just have to wait at this time. So. Next up, we have the Illinois Association of School Boards Virtual Delegate Assembly this Saturday at 10 a.m. Mrs. Salzer, when she was not at the meeting, was voted in to be our representative for the district, like any good board would do. And really only one person is able to register for the event. I know if she's unable to make it, Mrs. Egan was voted in as the alternate. And there is a packet of resolutions that we went through, and there are not, unlike in years past, there's not any big items in terms of carrying items into the school or anything like that. This year seems very plain, and I have a feeling that has to do with doing it virtually. So I'm sure Mrs. Salzer will make us proud on Saturday morning, and we'll make sure we call the reminder that that's at 10 o'clock. So, all right. I do have two other items. The first one, I know it's not until tomorrow, but tomorrow is Veterans Day. And many years ago, a lot of schools went to being in session on Veterans Day. And as a former social studies teacher, I have always been a proponent of that. I think our students learn a lot more about the appreciation and the importance of what our veterans have done. And obviously, we can't have the big assemblies that we've had in the past. We can't bring veterans into the buildings at this time, but I do know our schools have set up virtual meetings with veterans. I do know our junior high has done a video that will be shared out tomorrow for Veterans Day, as well as a sign contest. And I've seen some of those and they look awesome. So our students will be, whether they're in person or virtual tomorrow, will definitely be hearing about Veterans Day and the importance of that. So I'm glad that we get to continue with that. The other item that we had on there, last night I sent out an email to the entire community, to the staff, just updating everyone on where we are in terms of school. And this is our 4th week of having all of our students who wanted to be in person in the buildings, and our 5th week of having people overall. And I can't talk about what a great job our staff has done, our families have done, and our students have done, whether it's being flexible, learning new procedures. They have just been fantastic in making sure that this is working for our students. And I'm really, really proud of them. At the same time, we are seeing the numbers rise all across the state. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. One of my frustrations, and I'm going to try to share my screen here for a second, so I won't be able to see any questions. So if there are questions, if you could just hold on. Pull this up. If I can actually get to it. I have so many things up here right now. But I wanted to show what we've got going on here. So if you take a look at this chart, and this is the chart we've used multiple times throughout this year to show the positivity rate in Chicago Ridge. And you'll see that big red line, the 8% line. Throughout the entire summer, we were told as schools that 8% line was kind of the end all be all, the 8% positivity rate. Last month, specifically the Cook County Department of Public Health, as well as other departments across the state, said, yes, the 8% positivity rate is still something that you should be looking at. But something that's even more important, as they've learned when students at other schools started coming in, was what does the transmission look like in our schools? Unfortunately, we know everyone's going to be exposed at some point, somewhere, most likely. But what is that transmission looking like in school? And yes, we've had positive cases, just like every other school that has opened up, but we have not been able to trace those back to happening in school. And I think that's really important. And you'll see, it'd be about November 4th, it went from us being right around that red line to shooting straight up. And that is cause for concern. But I also think it's important that people understand that there's a second piece to that that is causing some of those numbers to go up. And that is on Friday, the governor announced that they are now including all probable cases. It's not just confirmed cases anymore, but if it's a probable case, whether they test positive or not, that is being included in this number. So you have seen in every community across the state that I've looked at, the line looks exactly like that. No matter where they were, all of a sudden it shot straight up. Right before that, we were at between 8 and 9%, so still not low numbers. I don't want to try to downplay this at all, but I also need people to understand that there is another reason that we've seen that swing. And then if you look at all of our surrounding communities, you'll see the swing take place at just about the same time. Everyone, no matter where they were at, and that we only saw Worth take a dip and then shoot straight up. Chicago Ridge is down here in the blue. And so that is a big reason that we've seen some of those sudden jumps. Now, yesterday we were all the way at 16%. Today we're back down in the 12%. And that is another part of the data that when you look at it every day, you start seeing patterns. And once a week, usually on Mondays, it looks like the state does kind of a data dump where they dump a whole bunch of negative cases in there, which brings the numbers down for a little while. And usually that's on Mondays. That didn't happen until today. Today was the big data dump where our day positivity rate was at like 4%. So those are the things that are keeping people up at night, kind of looking at. And I think it's important to kind of explain what those are. And then I did want to pull up, now the dashboard that we're putting online, that dashboard is updated every single Friday, just for consistency. But I did want to show an updated dashboard just where we are right now today. And I want to explain a few things on there. So right now, this week, we're only 3 days into this week. We do not have any confirmed student cases so far this week. We had 4 last week and 4 the week before that. Then when we look at our confirmed positive staff, you will see that this week we've had 0.5% of our staff test positive, but I think it's important to remember that we had 5 last week who still are not in the buildings with us. So that's a very important thing to remember. We look at students quarantined. Now, this number is specifically students who have either tested positive or who are a close contact, not students who came to school with a runny nose and now have to stay home for 14 days unless they get that note. And we have some students who have gotten those notes within a day or two and returned right away. We have other students who have ended up staying out the entire 14 days, whether they couldn't get an appointment or they decided just to stay at home. So our number of students who are out for just being sick is much higher than that, but we're usually waiting on them to get those notes. And then finally, our staff who are quarantined, you will see that we are at, we are at 17 right now. Last week we were at 18. So I'm sharing this so I can see everybody. And I show you all that because if you had asked me a week ago, how are things looking? We're going to stay open and keep going. I said, yeah, things are going great. By Friday night, we had 5 positive cases across the district in a very short amount of time. So far this week, we've gotten off to a very good start. And so the things that we're really looking at for me that I want to share out are the transmission rates in school and then also staffing. And staffing is impacted by a lot of different things. It's impacted by positive cases, close contacts, as we're starting to see some other schools close, and our teachers who have young students in those schools, that also can have an impact on whether or not our staff is available to work. So those are all things that we are looking at. As you saw in the letter that I sent out, if we have to put an adaptive pause in and pivot to remote learning, we would look to do it for approximately 2 weeks, depending on where we are in the calendar and what makes sense. And the schedules would stay the same, so parents would know, teachers would know, there wouldn't have to be any changes in students' teachers at that time. So we are really watching the numbers in our school, watching our staff, and we'll keep everyone informed as we can, but just wanted to see if anyone had any questions. Okay. I am going to turn it over to Kathy Picciolini for her Chief School Business Officials Report.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Okay, the first two items on the agenda, I'm going to briefly go over together because we have Corey here with Studio GC who is going to share some additional information. So the first item is the capital projects update, and we're starting to see a little progress towards our construction projects we've been talking about. And the first one is we had a representative from Infrared Roofing Technologies come over last week, and they did a roofing scan of all three buildings to give us an idea of how much insulation we would need. So Corey will be sharing those results with us in just a few minutes. And then the second item on the agenda is the Ridgelawn Pre-K playgrounds. And in your board packet, we had 4 different layouts for where the playgrounds would go over at Ridgelawn. And so today is really our first discussion we want to engage the board with in terms of the location of the playgrounds, the layout, what our intentions are. Do we want it fenced? So again, Corey's going to share some options with us to really gain the board's input, so then we could go further and start in selecting the specific layouts along with the types of equipment we would like for that playground. So I'm going to turn it over to Corey and
thanks, Kathy. Yeah, so we did, we'll start with the roofing. We did have Len Simpkins with Infrared Roofing Technologies that did scan all the roofs at all 3 schools last week in the early evening. Basically, why we had him come out is obviously we can't do any surface exploration and tell us the exact condition of the insulation underneath the roofing membranes. So we had him come out with his technologies to do the scan, which with the results of that will tell us what insulation is wet and is needing of replacement. One of the great benefits of this is his reports came back mostly negative. So the only, which is a good thing. The only areas that do show some sort of wet insulation is over at Finley, and it's only about 10-15% of the entire roof. So, and there is negligible wet insulation over at the other 2 schools. So over all 3 schools in your district, 10-15% of one of your schools is really good. And what that tells us is our initial estimates for that roof replacement that we provided were definitely conservative. So we will be providing updated estimates based on those reports, and prior to us releasing those drawings to go out to bid, and those will happen probably within the next 2 weeks. So that's very good news, and I'll share that roofing report with the administration and the board as well. So I'll provide that information, and that information also gets included with the project bidding documents, just to keep you abreast. So a couple of other projects that are as part of the capital planning for this upcoming summer is the site improvements, which the playgrounds are part of that, and I'll go that when we get to the next point. The flooring replacement for a lot of the carpet in the district, the lavatories and plumbing, and then the lighting replacement. So we're working diligently on getting those 4 projects released within the next couple of weeks to a month, and I believe it's in the January board meeting. That's when we expect to approve contracts for those documents. But I've been working with the administration and West to nail down the scope for those to provide exactly what's gonna get replaced or what's gonna be upgraded for those. So, the last item of the capital improvements that we had discussed from the planning sessions was the new furniture for the district. And again, in the near future, we'll be working with the administration to see how we can roll out and when we can roll out those pilot and those test fits. Understand we don't have full population buildings now, That doesn't mean we can't get the teachers kicking the chairs in, working with the tables and see how they interact. And obviously we won't have a full classroom of use, but still we can get the low hanging fruit out of the way. If they don't like a chair, you know you don't like a chair. And then with that, then is there any other questions with those before I move on to the playgrounds?
Go ahead, Mrs. Egan.
Well, you know, the last time we talked about this, I wasn't quite positive if that was the time to bring it up or now, or maybe in the future, but, you know, so it seemed to me from the last drawings that we saw that there weren't that many, there wasn't that much variety or choice in terms of the flexible seating. So I would like, you know, as people are trying things out, for there to be that variety, because I think, you know, every drawing that we saw kind of had just like a replacement of furniture, not necessarily seating choices. So I would like to see like standing stations and soft seating, in addition to whatever other, you know, seating was shown. But it looked to me like everything within the classroom was going to be kind of uniform and not lending itself to choice. So I just want to make sure that as that plan is moving forward, that there are a variety of things that will be tried and looked at from each person, and not just how do you like this chair and this desk.
Yeah, and I do think that has been the plan, to make sure that we offer multiple options for the teachers to try out, as well as the students.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't in the drawings, which is why I'm bringing that up. It was one kind of station, maybe two, and within, if you're truly going to offer flexibility, there should be, you know, 4 to 5 different styles within each classroom that has it, not just replacing everybody's desks and chairs.
Yeah, sure, Ms. Egan. We do have several of the options, soft seating options. Maybe they weren't made clear in those drawings, but with the cohort of groups that did visit the furniture vendors, we did have them initially test out some of them, and we did narrow them down. But however, you can be rest assured that there will be several different options that will be part of these test fits in these pilot programs for the schools.
Mr. Petropoulos?
I'm not positive, but so I guess this is for Tiffany. I remember there being like 5 or 6 different types of chairs. There was one chair where they could sit on the back of it if they wanted to, like to perch on it. There was like soft cubes. There were some chairs that had like stuff that you could put underneath. So I remember there being multiple chairs. Are you wanting there to be 5 or 6 options per classroom, or just in general that the teachers go around and try?
Well, to be truly flexible, kids should be able to come in and see where they're going to work, not even for that whole day, but for that time period. So you would need to be able to offer multiple seating choices for movement throughout the day. So like floor seating, standing stations, tall tables, regular size tables, chairs that rock, soft chairs. Like there's a whole bunch of research to all of these different types of furniture, and the drawings that I remember just kind of showed a replacement of, you know, making things more modern in terms of tables and chairs.
No, okay, then that's what I get. I am not a grammar school teacher, and so like the idea of what the room looks like, it's pretty standard. Like I'm visually remembering the junior high desks with the tables and the whiteboards that can go up and down and the different types of chairs. But now I understand what you're saying. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I guess Corey, it wasn't for you.
Yeah, junior high too, not just the elementary.
Corey, do you want to move on to the playgrounds at all?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so talking about the playgrounds, obviously this is an aerial view of Ridge Lawn, and more or less we have targeted in the board packet, I believe you have 2 separate areas and 4 total options. Now, when I go over these options, I want to explain that these are not obviously set in stone. These are things that we are providing to get feedback so we can develop more or less some narrowed down options to start working on the layouts of these equipments. So the equipment that we were showing is simply just placeholders. We haven't discussed any type of equipment. The colors are simply just representative. The sizes of this are also simply representative as well. So to repeat, I just want to say we're showing what we have, several different options, and we want to get some gut reaction, gut feedbacks, so then we can dive more into the design. So we're going to start with option 1 here. And this is one of the 3 options that are shown as located directly east to the existing playground. So I don't know if you can see my mouse. Looks like you can. So what we have is the existing school is here. The large gym is here on the south of the building. So what we are showing is this gray area potentially have an asphalt pathway that would connect to the existing asphalt drive, which would be directly located off the door on the east side of the gym. So I'm calling it asphalt. I'm also calling it could be a potential tricycle track that can wrap around the whole playground. And in the orange and the red shapes, again, this is just representative. That is it'd be the same poured in place rubber surface of the same, for the same playgrounds that we did over at Ridge Central a couple years ago. And then this whole playground area around the square, the 60 by 60, would be enclosed with the same fence that is exactly like the gate material that was over at Ridge Central in the courtyard there. So the size of this is very, very similar to either of the playgrounds that was installed over Ridge Central, anywhere between 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. So a couple items with this is that asphalt area could be asphalt, or it could just be simply grass all the way around. That orange and red area, that could expand to the whole area of that 60 by 60, what I'm showing here. Again, I'm just trying to say, do you want the whole area within the fenced area to be all rubber surface? Do you want it all to be the rubber surface with asphalt around it, or do you want it to be rubber surface with grass around it? So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for direction from here. So I'm going to go through the rest of them, and then we can circle back if there are any specific questions. So option 2 is similar to option 1, but in this case, what we're intending to do is rotating the poured in place into a more of a diamond shape. So we'd still have that same asphalt path that would lead up towards the gym, but in this case, we would have a triangular area of asphalt on a northwest quadrant and a triangular area of asphalt on the southeast quadrant. Again, these would just provide additional surfaces, additional play areas that are, once again, fenced in. In this option, I'm providing potential quadrants on the northeast and southwest side of just having that as grass. So again, just want to show several options here. Then the third option is changing the shape of the playground to more of a linear shape here. Again, the poured place surface would be towards the north side of the playground and grass on the south. Nothing isn't saying we can't shift it and do the playground surface on the south and the grass area on the north. Again, just trying to provide several different options. And in this option as well, I'm actually showing the fencing to go all the way around both playgrounds in this case. So again, I know the grant that we're working with is simply for pre-K kindergarten equipment, but if we're putting a fence on for this, it might be a good idea to explore fencing around both playgrounds. In this case, we would be having a fence that would go right down the middle of the two to have complete separation between pre-K access for the playground and the larger students access. So those are the three playgrounds that I've set that are strictly right next to the existing. The fourth option would be placing it on the southeast corner of the playground, directly atop of the asphalt. So if you remember back at Ridge Central when we did the, I think the 2nd through 5th grade playground out on the northwest corner of that building, that was asphalt to begin with, and we replaced that with the poured in place surface. This would be the same case. We would replace that asphalt with the poured in place surface and be flush with the asphalt next to it. Again, being a pre-K kindergarten, this would be completely surrounded by a fencing and a couple of gates to get access for. So, were there any gut reactions or any questions or something that you're hoping that you would have saw that you did not, or vice versa? Oh, by all means, sorry.
Mrs. Egan, you had your hand up?
Yeah. Two questions. One, can where that last option, I'm not sure where that is. And can you show us again the overhead view of lawn and show us specifically where that one is?
Yeah,
And
and I
then-
know one concern I have with that is if I'm looking at it correctly, that's where the basketball hoops would have just been installed.
Yeah, I can't tell where that is at all. And then I did think that we were looking at the courtyard area that's already the pre-K area. So I'm surprised at all of these options. Is that not on the table any longer?
We certainly did talk about the option of putting it in the courtyard, but in further discussion, and keep in mind, we could probably put any of these in the courtyard if the board decides to take that direction. The reason we steered clear is if in the future we need to expand for classroom and for services, we thought maintaining that spot and keeping that available for future expansion might make a little more sense.
Okay, and then I also, talking about gates and fences, I understand that's part of the grant and is necessary, but I'm also thinking back to there was some sort of a gate or something that we had to replace like every year until we finally took the gate down over there. I don't remember specifics of that, but it just sounds like if we already know that that can be an issue and a problem. And when we built the playgrounds at Ridge Central, we specifically did not want a gate. So I understand because it's pre-K. So that is why I did think that we were going back to the courtyard idea. So this is, I guess it's just giving some red flags.
And again, certainly still an option to put this in the courtyard. And one of the reasons we asked Corey to present it in the location of the blacktop is for visual, because in the back there's not a lot of traffic, for the children to be seen. But if we put it on the blacktop, it would be a little bit more visible to the public.
Well, once it's there, people are going to know it's there. So I don't understand that thinking. But Corey, I would like to see that last option where it is in terms of where Ridge Lawn is.
Yeah, so this is a little dated picture. Google hasn't updated it yet, but it's in this lower right-hand corner right here currently. Where these four
The 4 square. Is that where the basketball nets are right now currently? that we just had installed, so that
I
doesn't.
believe there might be a hoop down here and here. Again, and that's just showing an option. Like, there's really no rhyme or reason for where this this playground could be placed on this asphalt. And relocating of a basketball hoop, although it's a non-zero cost, placement of a playground of this cost, I believe might take precedence.
Well, I would disagree, because there is nowhere else for there to be basketball hoops in that area. So that's the only asphalt area that would have grass that would have already had that dug in and cemented. Like, that is kind of a big to do. But I mean, instead of having that in the, what is that, southeast quadrant, you could put that, if you wanted it on the asphalt, you could put it at the other end, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But in terms of square footage, I mean, these things would fit within the courtyard that's already there. And then they wouldn't need to be fenced, but it would already be surrounded and only available to our pre-Kers. It seems to me that's the best option. So I'll let other people talk.
Okay. Is it okay, go?
Yeah, and I know Ms. Davenport had her hand up before you did.
Oh, go ahead.
So hopefully she doesn't freeze up. Ms. Davenport, whenever you're ready.
A couple of things. First is going to be a request, and one is going to be a comment, and the third is going to be a question. But first, just my comment. I think option number one, where you described the asphalt being able to be turned into a track for tricycles, I think that's amazing. I think that is great. I love that. I think kids would love that. I just thought that was a fantastic idea. I never would have thought of that. I thought that was great, but that's just my comment about that. And so Ms. Egan raised or made the comment that she thinks there's red flags based on the positioning of these options. And I didn't sense anything that you said that would give me a red flag. Can you explain why you felt it was a better option to remove it off of the current asphalt and put it into the locations of the courtyard? Can you explain like why that was a decision that was made for options?
And Ms. Davenport, were you asking Corey or were you asking Ms. Egan?
I'm not asking Ms.
Okay.
Egan about
Okay.
why she is. I'm asking why the options came from the courtyard.
Can people even hear me talk, or am I like basically not even here? Like, can I be heard or no? Can people hear me when I'm talking? Because from the look at everyone's faces, it looks like I can't be heard.
Ms. Davenport.
Okay, so yeah, no,
Okay, so yeah, no, I mean, I didn't see anything that would have anyone say that they saw red flags in any of these proposals. From my understanding, Kathy had made a comment, and I don't know if, I don't care, whomever has the most or best information, that would be fantastic. But I understand the reason why these options were made to put the playground into the location they are at is because it may in the future allow the use of that asphalted space for growth of the school or activities. So I don't see what the red flag is that, first of all, Ms. Egan saw in moving the courtyard. But second of all, maybe it can be resolved if there can be some discussion as to why that location was picked. And then we can all understand, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, the red flags that I was bringing up were the fact that we did not want the playgrounds at Ridge Central to be fenced off. So I would not think we should be looking at any options that required us to fence off a playground at Ridge Lawn when we explicitly did not want that to happen at Ridge Central. And then my other red flag was the fact that there was a gate that had to be replaced at least yearly, if not more than that, for multiple years in a row prior at Ridge Lawn's playground that wound up just being taken down because it had caused so much grief for it having to be fixed and or replaced. Those were the red flags. It wasn't about the plans. It was about those two board facts.
And what I think we need to remember is we're just having a conversation and we're presenting all the options. In all the options where the playground is next to the existing playground, the drawings show a fencing, but we don't have to fence it. It's an option. We did reach out to ISB to confirm that it does not have to be fenced. So that is an option. And I do recall Mrs. Egan's comment about the gate over at Ridge Lawn. And I do understand that there's a fence back there that some of the community uses to go through it. But I also believe that is more of a chain link fence where this, if we decide to fence it, would be a little bit more commercial grade. And I'm not sure if it could actually be destroyed.
Mrs. Halsey?
First of all, I have no problem putting a fence around particular. There, I know, I got it. I don't have a problem putting a fence around the playground, but that isn't what I really want to talk about. Dr. Thorns and Fran, you're pretty landlocked over there, right? You have nowhere else to move, right?
Fran's going to come up and talk into the.
Thank you, Fran. I know you guys don't have a lot of room left over there.
One of the reasons why the courtyard itself was discussed, and this was back when we were meeting with Corey to talk about construction needs in general, that potentially the courtyard could be an area that could be built on from the existing structure of the building. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at an alternate location. I want to answer Mrs. Egan about the fence. We had two different issues regarding the fence. One was the chain link fence that Kathy's referring to. On the perimeter of the property, there is a fence that goes around separating the parking lots from the apartment buildings from Ridge Lawn. From time to time, that fence has been cut and opened as kind of a pathway coming through. We also did have a gate behind the building. It was just kind of a swing gate that we eventually removed because it was just really kind of a hindrance. Kids were sitting on it. It was really kind of causing an unsafe situation. So in terms of the space at Ridge Lawn, we have that asphalt area, and then we have the field behind us. And we know the field behind us was just recently used for the geothermal construction. So those are just kind of some options that we put into play. On a personal level, we were looking at that area right next to the existing playground because of those options where we would have the older children's area and the younger children's area for the pre-K. The area, looking at this, I haven't seen these drawings before, or the suggestions before today. Looking at that blacktop area, my initial concern is it's going to take away from the K-5 population for recess. That is a huge chunk of area there. And that is their outdoor play area for recess. So that could cut into that as well. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm interested to hear the exploration and where we go from here. There's definitely some different possibilities, but that's really kind of where those areas shake out, if that helps.
Okay. I also want to say that I've totally lost my train of thought. I do agree with Fran's assessment of where it should go. At the same time, we were when we were at working on centrals, we were able to figure out a way to, well, not me, but you guys were able to figure out a way for the kids to have a choice. So are you already planning on I mean, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to do. And is it even possible to include the remote kids in that? So you're already working on that? Yeah, so it'd be nice to get some of their ideas, like the last time, the kids were so proud of themselves when that happened. So that needs to be incorporated too. I'm glad you guys are already working on that.
I think the track that goes around,
Mrs. Egan?
the track idea that goes around, if that could include more of a space where it could even be, you know, sometimes kids just like to walk or run, and having it not just circling the smaller part, but both parts, or even coming from the gym like it did around the bigger part, around the smaller new area and into the blacktop area where they play. So you can make kind of like a circuit, would probably be a nice extension as well.
Can I speak up, Adam? Ms. Egan, I do want to respond with regards to the fencing, and Kathy and I will have to confirm with ISBE, but part of the, one of the reasons that the fence did not circle the playground outside of the courtyard at Ridge Central was because that was geared towards an age group of a larger age. Inside the courtyard, that was required at that time to have completely enclosed, since that was designated as the pre-K playground. So we'll definitely confirm with ISB the requirement of fencing this playground, whichever location it is in.
Or I'd like to just ask a question. With these drawings, do we know, just so we have the option moving forward and looking, like what size that courtyard is? Because my guess is those are really the two areas that we're looking at is the courtyard and next to that playground. So just if we can make sure, like in the next set, that we know exactly what could fit in there.
It's almost scary on how similar the sizes of the courtyard versus the size of the option right next to the playground is. It's almost right smack dab correct.
Are there any other comments or questions for Corey at this time on the playgrounds?
I got one more comment, Dr. Thorns. In response to Ms. Salazar's question, there will be voting opportunities for the students as well when we do actually get some equipment shown. And I do have a question for the board about the equipment specifically. Is do we want to go any specific themes, or do more of a traditional layout like we had at the two playgrounds that we did a couple years ago? Or has there been any thought to that?
Can you give us an example of what a theme would look like?
So for example, I believe we showed like a pirate ship theme. So the main piece was based on a pirate ship, and some other pieces would be following that theme. So things like that. Maybe another theme could be rocket ship based, or things like that.
So I remember from our last discussions that the themes seemed really cute, but not a lot of usable space. And I would think that making sure that there is ample amount of choice and play space for, you know, at least one pre-K class, if not 2 or 3 or 4, to be out there at the same time. You know, I don't know that their times are limited. So I know you wouldn't necessarily think that you should have to have all 4 classes out at the same time, but I think you should be able to plan for that and having enough play area, not just something cute.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we're leaning towards the option of putting it directly next to the playground, or a size similar that could fit in the courtyard. So sizing is pretty much set, and the option with going with equipment that would be and I know I heard one opinion, but I didn't hear any dissenters. If they provide as much play surface as possible with equipment kind of meandered about, so give the option for multiple groups to use the equipment. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay, and I just wanted to ask one more question. Regarding the layout inside the space itself, I'd like to hear the board's input on having it be pour and play surface as opposed to grass area. What are your thoughts on that? Any preferences?
Mr. Hillman?
My preference is pour in place.
Okay, so Corey, could you just give us an idea of what you will be able to present, if anything, at the December board meeting?
Sure, Kathy. Yeah, what I'll present is I'll base it from what I'm understanding. I've heard that they do like the port and place. The board does like the port and place option with the manual equipment, with potentially exploring an asphalt trike path around the area, and potentially expanding that trike path to do a larger circuit. So I'll show that option. I'll start getting some pieces together as well, equipment-wise, so we can show more renderings as opposed to the diagrammatics I showed today. So I'd probably bring to that table 2 or 3 separate options with play pieces as part of that.
Okay, thank you. That was a great discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward, tomorrow, ISC 4 is going to be in our buildings doing our annual health, life, safety visit. We anticipate it to look very similar to what it has looked like in the prior years. Due to COVID, there are a couple of minor adjustments. Some of the data, suggests we have to keep doors open as opposed to closed, which is based on guidance from the Illinois Department of Health. So we will have a conversation with the representatives tomorrow morning, and then we will go through each building individually. And usually then within a week or so, they will give us our report. They will give us a few days to make any sort of recommendation changes that we can in the short term. And then by the December meeting, they will issue their report, but really not anticipating too much with the inspection tomorrow.
Kathy, are they coming through while students are there?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Egan.
Are they coming through while students are in the building?
Yes, that's always how it's been. So how it is usually it's myself or Wes walk around with the custodian and a building administrator and one of the representatives, and we go through, and it's a very quick process. They do try to peek into a classroom that is not being occupied, but it's not obtrusive at all to the students or the staff.
But can't it be during lunchtime?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Egan, we could not hear you on that one.
Couldn't it be done during the almost 2-hour lunch break while students are not in the building?
And I will say they usually come and they want to see what it looks like with students there. I also want to let the board know that I have voiced my displeasure of having to jump through these hoops for a life safety visit during a pandemic, when half of the stuff that is they're looking for, we're not able to follow because we have public health guidelines that are telling us to do something else. So I did instruct our administrators to make sure it is exactly what we have been doing these last couple of weeks. Our wipes are going to be out, our hand sanitizers are going to be out, our doors are going to be open. Some of our classrooms have furniture in them that are stacked to get them out of other rooms. If they have a problem with it, I've already instructed Kathy to make sure they come and see me afterwards. So it is a frustrating process right now.
Yeah, I mean, I get all that, and I'm glad that you're making that known, but it just seems like, you know, at a time when we're not supposed to be having any visitors into the schools, that and with an hour and 50 minutes, that they should be able to get through, you know, at least 2 schools during that lunchtime and come back on a third day or a second day. It doesn't seem to me that that should have to take place while students are in the building.
It's one of those, they just call us up and say, this is the time we're coming, and be ready. So.
Can I say something? Tiffany, they are under a very tight schedule, and I understand we're told that we're not to have visitors in school, but it's, as far as I know, that's state mandated too, the life safety. So we have no choice but to comply, and we'll probably get dinged a lot, but that's the way it is.
Well, we're okay with the dings.
The next item on the agenda is I wanted to go over the CARES expenditures. And under the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Grant, which is known as the CARES Grant, Illinois State Board of Education has given us 3 individual grants. And the one that we know and use the term CARES is the majority of the grant is used to prepare our buildings for students and staff and to keep them safe. So out of the $609,000 that was awarded to us to date, the district has actually spent about $125,000 of that. Much of the expenses spent to date were on PPE. We have sanitizing wipes and hand sanitizers, gloves, masks, you know, really anything that you can imagine, we have accumulated. And those costs are definitely going to continue throughout the year as we deplete those items. There are some one-time item expenses that are not going to occur. Such as putting bubblers and water bottle fillers on the water fountains, things like that. The plexiglass, we've already absorbed that cost, and that was a one-time cost. Moving forward, the big expenses are going to be replenishing that PPE along with our temporary cleaning staff and Citywide. Citywide comes in nightly now and does the disinfecting. So even though we talked last meeting about some unanticipated expenses we had, administration still feels confident that we can work within that $609,000 to keep our buildings safe for our students and staff moving forward. Any questions on that? Okay, so the next and last item on my agenda is the tentative 2020 tax levy. At the study session, we did an overview on what goes into preparing the tax levy. So this is just a very brief explanation with the dollars that we will be levying for the school year. And Dr. Thorns, if you would be so kind to allow me to share my screen. Okay. Okay, when we prepare our tax levy, we always have to put in a couple of assumptions. And this year we are going to assume that there is no increase in EAV from 2019. And currently our EAV is $151 million. We are putting in $300,000 in new construction, because when we have new construction come on the books, we have the ability to levy for the entire value of that property. And we never historically have $300,000, but we always go a little bit conservative because we never want to leave that behind, because if we miss that EAV, it's really lost forever. And then as another precaution, we put in traditionally a $50,000 balloon levy. And that equates to several $1 million to change in EAV. because depending on if the EAV goes up or down, we never want to put the district in the position to leave any money on the table. So we will be including a $50,000 balloon levy. And this next slide is really just a very simplified description of what we're going to be requesting. Our total capped levy, which is our operating costs, and some of those do have operating capped levy amounts with them, or tax rate ceilings. So we'll be asking for roughly $6.9 million on our capped funds. In addition, the bond and interest is going to be $835,000. So our total tax levy that we will be asking the county to approve is $7.7 million. And what we need to do is, before we can formally adopt the final budget next month, we do need to take action on approving the tentative levy. So that's what I'll be asking the board to do later in the evening. And the board, in their board packet, does have a little bit more detail about the finances and the calculation of the levy. And then we will certainly be filing it with the county clerk by the end of December. Does anyone have any questions on the tentative levy? Okay, if there are no questions, I will turn it back to Dr. Thorns. Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Salzer. I believe we are at 7.0 old business.
Yep. Do we have any old business? Other? Okay, new business? Okay. Potential 8.1, potential board action to approve the tentative 2020 tax levy. Need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Mary.
So Mrs. Egan on the motion, Mrs. Callan on the second. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Okay. 8.2, discussion regarding RFQ, request a quote on outside legal counsel to set up a panel counsel for the duration of a specific time.
This item was brought to me from the board. We had a specific board member who brought this up, and just wanted to let the board know that we currently are using two firms, Engler, Callaway, Bastian and Schraga, and then Hauser, Izzo, Petrarca, Gleason, and Stillman. And the item on here is just a discussion of going out there and really seeing what our options are, whether we're looking for prices or what firms can offer. So I'm going to kind of open this up for a discussion for anyone who'd like to share out. Ms. Davenport?
I guess I'll just get it started. Basically, the request for qualifications for firms. I know that at least in the years that I've been here, we use the same two firms. It sounds as if it's been the same two firms even long before mine. Traditionally, I mean, the way I see it, and I think the way a lot of municipalities and municipal entities do things, is they like to at least open the door to RFQs periodically, just to make sure they have highly competitive firms. They also make sure they have a panel of firms they can go to. It ensures that you not only have that quality, you also have the competitive pricing, and you're also making sure that you always have a diverse group that you can go to and soundboard off of. I'm in no way, shape, or form taking issue with the two firms that we've been using, but it seems as if they've been kind of sort of grandfathered in. And I think it would be a pretty nice time to open an RFQ to see what firms are out there. Get a panel of more than two. I don't know if both firms do exactly the same type of law. and this is just my understanding, because I honestly have on 1 or 2 occasions in the 4 years I've been a board member actually had contact with the council. I believe one of them does. I know one of them did our contract, maybe our labor stuff, and the other one, isn't that correct? I think they do 2 different sets of law. I don't think they both do the same type of overlap of work. I think it's always a good idea to have at least 2 firms that overlap. You can have a second opinion, you can have someone to go to. And like I said, you always keep things fresh and you always make sure you're getting the utmost service when you have just more than, one firm to go to when you have a specific question. I just think it keeps things top notch. And I would also say that there's really not an expense to issuing an RFQ. The onus is on firms that are interested in giving a response to an RFQ. And I will say Dr. Thorns approached me a few minutes before we started and did say that, just so everyone is aware, there's no requirement that you do an RFQ. And I absolutely agree with that. I don't think there is a requirement. But personally, what I feel, and someone can correct me if they feel or have experience otherwise, that when you have an RFQ, it puts all these other law firms on the same playing field, so you can vet them at an arm's length and really see what your options are when other firms come and they provide to you what their qualifications are. The alternative would be to simply you reach out to a specific firm, and I think that kind of results in a lack of transparency when we are then cherry picking which firms we want to go to. I think it's best for diversity, competition, price, effectiveness, eagerness, enthusiasm of a law firm when they come to you and say, this is what we can do for you.
Any other questions, comments, discussion on the topic? Ms. Lamo?
I agree with Elaine. It's a good thing to put it out there, just like to see what's out there. Here's my question though. Dr. Thorns, in your previous, do you know who in your previous district, I know you weren't superintendent at that point, who they had used? I mean, I know that the ones that we're using now, it was one firm and then it split, and that's why we have 2, and that's why we kept 2 on. Yeah, each do different things. I mean, are there a lot out there doing it, I guess?
Yes. Are you asking?
Because I know it's very
specific. Are there a lot out there who use different firms at the same time? Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Sorry. I just would like to get some idea of, is this a big market that's out there? Because I know that we're school districts and sometimes school districts are different. So that I was just.
It's not a huge market that's out there, but there are definitely firms who specialize in different ones. There's different sizes of firms. We used a completely different one out there. I do know Kathy is kind of just seeing what prices are out there, and I do think they're reasonably priced, but I think it's also important to understand what services they offer, because not everyone does offer the same services. Ms. Davenport?
I think there is a very healthy competition of law firms that do school law. I don't think that would be a problem if you open the door to an RFQ of not getting anyone to respond. I would think just the opposite. I think you would get a lot of very eager firms who are willing to really show the school district what they can offer. And also, I did include in there in my thought process that the RFQ should go out regularly. I think that's important as well, because it prevents relationships that allow firms or people to get less than 100% enthusiastic and competitive. I think if you keep reopening the door and re-vetting your firms on a regular basis, it keeps everyone on their toes, it keeps everyone eager. You don't create these such hugely long-lasting relationships where people just get so comfortable in their role that you lose that edge, you lose the spark, you lose the competitiveness, the price. That's why I said to just have it for a set time. I think it is a good service to the community to make sure that the representation we're getting is top notch.
Mrs. Egan, it looks like you had unmuted. Do you have a comment?
Well, I don't disagree, Elaine, with what you're saying, but I also don't think that the firm that we have, there is any type of strong relationship or ties that would have precluded this need for a discussion right now. So I just want to say that. We've had no issues. They've been nothing but open. We've been able to go to them for whatever we've needed. So I just want it out there that there has been no cause for this to happen.
Ms. Davenport?
Okay, so to suggest that the reason I brought it to the board is because I got some issue with the law firm we're currently using is a bogus, I won't even call it an accusation. I think that's bogus.
So
and I'll
don't
be frankly
put my
honest,
mouth,
I don't have any
fair.
complaint about the firm we're
Elaine.
using. And you open the door to an RFQ, then I'm sure they will submit a response, and I'm sure their response will be stellar, and I'm sure they can make panel. So just because they're our current firm and we open a door to an RFQ, I mean, as a law firm that does municipal law, you have to be open to the idea that your own firm is going to get revetted through a new RFQ that goes out. There's absolutely
understand
that's
that
not
the
a
law
dig to our
firms
current
that do
council.
all
As a matter of
this
fact,
technology is
you know,
not-
I'm sure they will respond and they'll look great.
If I can have the floor, please. Tiffany wasn't being accusatory, I don't think at all. She was explaining her satisfaction with the current firm that we have. That's all she was doing. I've worked a lot over the years. I mean, I've been here for many years. First with other people on that firm, and then more recently, the last few years with Lisa Calloway. And I agree. I have no problem with going out for bid or at least talking to somebody because that's and that is a good thing to do. But I have nothing bad to say about the current law firm that we.
Nor did I.
I'm not accusing at all. I just said I have nothing bad to say about the current law firm that we are using.
Any other comments or discussion from anyone? All right. Ms. Sullivan? So the Stepping Stones contract for paraprofessional positions are the ones that we have not been able to fill. We are down quite a few paraprofessionals from this time last year, and there was not the need to fill those when we were in remote learning. There is a need at this point to fill some of those positions even after changing some schedules around. The contract is for $32 an hour for up to 4 positions. Again, we currently have 9 fewer paras than we did last year. Mrs. Egan, it looks like you had your hand up.
Well, I do, because I know when we've brought up paras before, I have asked for changes in schedules and to be creative and to kind of inform us of the process. So to see that this week in the packet did surprise me. I do not support using an outside service for any of our things, especially for a para position. So if this comes to a vote, I am going to vote no. And I just want to clarify that ahead of time, because I do not believe that should be in there. And I would like to see the steps that have taken place prior to it being put in right now.
Yep, we can show you those. And Mrs. Salzer?
Okay. I myself only want to see this used as the last resort. If we absolutely couldn't have anybody else, and I know you have tried to rearrange things as much as possible, and that's something we have to continue to do to hopefully just use the staff that we already have. I'm assuming that we have the positions posted as we do with the maintenance. Am I right?
Yes, those positions have been posted.
Okay, let's keep our fingers crossed that we can find somebody.
And this will come up for a vote, and really it comes down to, we have some positions we legally have to fill based on special ed, and we've moved around schedules everywhere we could, and with having people who are out and everything like that, it's definitely been a little tough right now. Ms. Davenport?
If we do not agree to the stepping stones contract, what is the worst case scenario that you can
We would be
envision?
out of
Dr. Thorne?
compliance with special ed, what they've been told that they would get from their IEPs.
Are we having the same, are we having the same problem with like substitutes as well as paras? It's just getting this, are people, I mean, I know we've had problems in the past with substitutes and things like that. Are we finding that it's getting worse just because of COVID, because people are choosing not to go, I mean, come back, or choosing not to, I mean, because I would think that if you're mom that's at home and it's like, well, I could go sub or do this, but I
Yes, we're
have
finding,
all of my children at home, I'm staying here. Is that what we're finding?
Is Tirza done talking for you guys? Okay, sorry. So yes, substitutes specifically, a lot of times districts will have retired teachers as substitutes, and a lot of those who have been with us for a long time did not feel comfortable coming back during the pandemic. You also have, really, you can pick, substitutes can pick anywhere right now because everyone is in such desperate need. We have seen many districts raise the rates to $140, $150 a day, and even some of those districts are still struggling to find substitutes that they need. And paraprofessionals, we are not the only district who is struggling to find those. If you go on any website and look at what positions districts have available, you'll find paraprofessionals on many of them. It's just been really hard to fill those. And we're going to see the same thing, unfortunately, with teachers moving forward in specific areas. We've talked special ed. We've talked science seems to be a really hard place to find them. And that's something I know the Illinois legislature is working on and tried to be a little more flexible in what they're offering. But it's still going to be a shortage that every district around is going to face at some point.
I'll make the motion to approve the stepping stones contract.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
No.
Ms. Davenport,
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Hillman,
Yes.
Mrs. Callen,
Yes.
Mrs. Salzer.
Yes.
Mr.
Can't
Hillman,
hear.
I'd like to know exactly what we're doing here, because I think we're kind of confused from the beginning.
We need to decide whether or not we're going to go for the contract now or put it off. I mean, this doesn't put it completely out of the picture, but are we going to approve the contract today and then get started? Or are we going to wait till later? Am I explaining this right? And then do it?
I'm still confused, and I agree with Mr. Hillman. Even if we approve the contract, are we saying we're moving forward, or are we saying we're approving the contract but putting it in advance? I think he's right. I think there is confusion as to what the board decided they were.
And my understanding from kind of hearing from everyone on the board was that we wanted to hold off. The majority wanted to hold off, and that meant not approving the contract.
Is that what the majority in fact said?
That was how I summed it up, and it seemed like most people were shaking their heads, but we can definitely see if anyone feels differently right now.
So we need a second motion. Yeah, we did it first. Mary Killen did it first.
What was the motion?
Thank you.
No, I said,
I have
what
Mrs.
was
Callan.
the motion? No, wait.
Oh, are we
What,
gonna vote today on taking the contract for Dr. Bedonia for strategic planning services?
Mary, were you making a motion for that? Mary did not make a motion for that. No motion on the table.
We need a second. We already have first.
There is no
I don't
first.
think we know what the motion was.
There was no.
What was
mo-
the specific
Did we not hear
motion?
what's happening?
If everyone could just hold on one second, can you please just turn that thing off? If everyone can just hold on one second, I want to try to find out why we think that there was a motion made. Was there a motion made? If you could raise your hand if you already made a motion. So at this point, we have no motion on the table yet, but why don't you read?
Potential board action to approve the contract with Dr. Madonia for consulting services for the strategic planning services in an amount of $15,000. Need a motion. Huh? It dies then.
it appears to me there's no motion made.
Eight point five. Other, we got anything else? No? 9.0, meeting reports. We don't have anything there either, right? Other, nothing, informational? Okay. Opportunity for visitors to speak. Anybody here want to say anything? So I get the president's prerogative now? Okay. Once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank all of you for all the hard work that you're doing. That includes maintenance, Wes and Sammy. Thank you for everything, everybody. All the efforts that you've been putting in, all the extra efforts that you've been putting in. I've been able to stop and see a couple of you. I would like to continue to do so periodically. Just drop in. Megan, I'll try and get there maybe Friday. Okay, just stop in and see what's going on. But thank you once again, and hopefully this will be over sometime soon, where we get back to some kind of normalcy. Okay, thank you. 13.0.
Adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body to determine its validity as defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. The discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as described in Section 2C2. Discussion of pending or probable and imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the district as defined in Section 2C11, and the discussion of minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act as defined in Section 2C21 for the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the
will
motion.
Motion to go to closed session.
I'll second.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle. Aye. Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
If everyone remote could just give us a few minutes to head in there, and we'll try to start up in about 5 minutes.